And it's BBO War, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia at heart and from around the globe. And hello, everybody. Today is Tuesday. It is time for True Crime Talk Radio in the morning. And I am your host, Black Box Ned. And you guys know the drill. You can hit the like button if you want, subscribe if you haven't, and drop a comment down below if you have something to say about any of the true crime cases that are discussed in this episode. True Crime Talk Radio is a segment where multiple stories can be discussed within a single segment. And in case you did not see the Friday episode, we have to say a big farewell to a fallen comrade. Some of you may remember the fox, and this is all that's left of the fox. My fiance knocked him off the coffee table. It's very saddening. You know, the fox and I were together for 8 years. We watched many true crime shows together, and I was even talking about that on the Thursday episode. But hey, welcome to True Crime Talk Radio in the morning, and because today is Tuesday, you can still say hello to Snoopy here. And we have some people in the chat. We have Batman66 who says, Biba el Nedo. Muchas gracias, Senor Batman. And we have Jerome from Mysteries with Mr. Belgique who says, hello, my friend. Hello to you, Jerome. All right, so the namesake for this episode is going to be coming to us from an interview that I was watching with an actress named Emma Laird. I've talked about this before on the channel that I follow the show Mayor of Kingstown, as well as some of the other Paramount Plus shows. Emma Laird is an actress on that program, and she played a victim of abuse and trauma. And during this interview, she was asked, how do you prepare for a role like that? How did you prepare for this role where you were playing a victim of such, intense physical and emotional abuse? And what she said was, it took a while to embrace the darkness. It took a while to enter the darkness, to enter into that state of mind. But once she was able to do so, it started to feel so genuine. And even though she did not experience the events firsthand, because she's an actress, she's just like reading the script and, getting into character. She didn't experience this firsthand, but she was able to put her mind there. And when I was listening to this, I was really thinking about how that applies to the true crime world and about how it applies to a lot of the different true crime stories that I talk about here on Black Box Online Radio, whether it's the Zodiac Killer, Jack the Ripper, D.B. Cooper, JonBenet Ramsey. And I think that it is possible to do that. And sometimes we can enter into the mind of the serial killer, but I'm almost at the point where that becomes somewhat desensitized. And I think a lot of you guys are as well, because most of you guys in the chat follow the Zodiac Killer and Jack the Ripper, and this concept of what are the experiences of a serial killer like, recreating the cycle of destructive behaviors, the unhealed childhood traumas, and so on. So I think that a lot of that is something that is a little bit more explanatory. But when it comes to the stories of the victims, that is again where you can achieve this not only on an empathetic level, but you can try your best to understand some of the experiences that they've had. Again, you're not going to feel the physical pain. Like, I've never been shot or stabbed, but when I'm listening to the stories of the victims and how they tell the experiences, it's like cognitive empathy. And that's where you can put yourself in somebody else's shoes to try and comprehend the experiences. Cowpoke is here. Hey, Cowpoke, yo to you too. And Mysteries with Mr. Belgique says, hello, Fox and Snoopy. Well, Jerome, it's your last time to say hello to Snoopy. You can say hello to the Fox. It's your last time to say hello to the Fox. You can still say hello to Snoopy. Sorry, I was thinking about Snoop because he's right here on the screen. Classic Chivy Cat is here and says, awesome, I made it. My Downs brother loves Snoopy. Morning. Hey, Snoopy's going to be around here for a while every Tuesday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, I also want to talk about the Crime Talk bullet points, and this is going to be a regular segment here on True Crime Talk Radio, because I tell you guys that I start the day with Crime Talk, which is a program that's hosted by Scott Rice, which you can hear on YouTube. And he is a practicing attorney, and he took this concept of kind of like entering into someone else's mind in a different way in one of his episodes. And I think that it's going to be something that people wouldn't exactly be expecting. For example, sometimes when people are outsiders to a subject, they do not understand how normal some things are, how frequently discussed some things are, how something might seem extreme to people in the general public, but if you're following, like, let's say true crime, like if you're a true crime follower, it might seem very normal to you, especially when you're talking about the stories of abuse that people experience. Let's say with a serial killer, the childhood traumas that they may have experienced, and how that would go on to compound into something that is going to turn into destructive tendencies later on in life. It's almost as if they've taken in the bad experiences, and the bad experiences stay within them, and then instead of just going to a better place, they're just always holding on to that, and it turns into silent rage or white rage, and then they unleash that at a different time. Okay, so this is all very basic stuff when it comes to looking at the behavior of serial killers. But I mean, when it comes to people in the general public, they might not want to hear that at all. If you are not someone who deals with this type of thinking regularly, then they're just not going to comprehend it, or they're not going to know necessarily why somebody would do that in a particular way. And the example that Scott Reich was using was really actually quite different, because he was talking about his experiences as a lawyer. And he stated that, he's been a practicing defense attorney for 30 years. And I'm not going to use these words because I hate these words. Your best interests. Some people think that an attorney is going to do things for your best interests. No, because Scott Reich openly said this on Crime Talk. He's like, the lawyer tries to mitigate the damage. The lawyer tries to reduce the damage for the client. And a very clear example of how that functions is that somebody might have been accused of a crime, and the lawyer's just going to be like, what are the options? Well, this is a possible thing that might give you the least amount of punishment. Never mind if you did it or not. So many times people are told to confess to crimes that they didn't commit. They're told to confess to crimes that they didn't actually do, because the lawyer says, well, you have a very high chance of getting arrested and going to jail, or not, maybe they're already arrested, but of going to jail for something for a very, very long time. So you should plead guilty. Again, the lawyer is trying to mitigate the damage. That's not in the best interest of the person. That's just, like what has been presented. And we have a super chat here from Batman66. Batman66, thank you so much, saying I need to sell BBOR mugs. I actually tried once, but I guess the Teespring page didn't do too well. And I'm not even so focused on merchandise right now. I'm mostly focused on talking to you guys about any subject under the sun or in the darkness for True Crime Talk Radio. Casbah says, good day to all. Oh, no, this is not Casbah. This is Dr. Casbah. Hey, Dr. Casbah, congratulations on the completion of your doctorate. And we have Richard Delaney is here. Richard Delaney is in the chat saying hello. Hello to you, too. Now, I've been talking to you guys about the radio Reddit channel that I've been following on Zodiac Monday, as well as a couple of other segments here on Black Box Online Radio. And I would like to continue with those types of discussions because I find that they are also valuable experiences that we can share. And think about everything that I said with Crime Talk. The lawyer is trying to mitigate the punishments that the defendant experiences. On Radio Reddit, I heard a story just like that a couple hours after I heard Scott Reich talking about it. And that was, this guy's telling the story of how he had 2 false allegations filed against him. He was a school teacher, and he had a rumor going around that he was having an affair with a student. And he's like, absolutely, it was false. They conducted an investigation and they determined that it was false. And it turned out he was having, like, by his own admission, an emotional affair with the student. Like, but that's just, emotional bonding, being very close to each other. But he said it was an emotional affair. So he was not fired, but he was told to resign. Then he goes back to his girlfriend. They get into an argument about it, a very heated argument. They're throwing cups and breaking dishes, and the apartment is destroyed. So then she goes to the police, and she says all of these false things about how he tried to attack her. This guy goes to jail. The teacher has no job now, and he's also sent to jail. He was in jail for 6 months awaiting trial. And apparently the girlfriend came forward. She had a change of heart. She felt guilty, and she said, all right, I made all that stuff up. I was actually using some talking points from a social worker about the signs of abuse that could protect me. I should tell the police this, this, and this. And she used the good information against her. The Golden State Killer did this all the time. But this woman was apparently not a pure sociopath, because she had this moment of empathetic awareness where she's like, I'm going to tell the truth. So this guy was presented with 2 things. The lawyer says, very clearly, he's like, All right, you have two options. One of them is you plead guilty to this crime that you didn't commit, and you can walk out of jail today. You get time served as credit. Option number two, it goes to trial, or first there's going to be a hearing, and the judge might even refile the charges. Then it's going to go to trial. You might be spending years in prison. Plead guilty now and walk out, or like maintain your innocence, and you might lose. So he chose to plead guilty to something that he did not do, and then walk out of the courthouse and the jail, wherever he was stationed. I can comprehend why somebody would do that, but it's still got to be very, very difficult. I also found this story to be a little bit fishy because he's talking about how there were two false allegations filed against him. And when I hear stuff like that, I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. How many people are just out to get you, bro? How much rotten luck are you just going to have piling up? But when you hear the context of the story, you don't necessarily know anything else other than what this anonymous person has posted online, which has then been transplanted onto YouTube. So this really is just an example of somebody who may have had some very, very tragic circumstances. And it does appear to be the case that there are people who lie. There are people who sabotage their partners. There are people who also just might not be trying to do anything wrong. Like that guy had the emotional affair with the student. I wouldn't blame the student. The student was most likely a minor. And by his own admission, they're just having like emotional bonding. They weren't necessarily doing any type of explicit activities. So life is complicated. Life can be very complicated. But one of the subjects that I talk about a lot here on Black Box Online Radio is the nature of psychopathy, sociopathy, and narcissism. And I've gone through several examples here. Firstly, I said I don't think that guy's girlfriend was a psychopath because she came forward and she had a moment of clarity and a moment of empathy. And I do want to go through some things. Well, by the way, can everybody hear me? Everybody hear me? I'm getting a warning that's saying that I'm reconnecting. Let me know in the chat if you can hear things. We have something from Classic Chevy Cat here that says, if you plead guilty to something you didn't do, is that perjury? Is that perjury, Classic Chevy Cat? By the way, can everybody hear me? I got this warning on the screen that said the connection was lost. I don't know. I've never seen that before. It was in like bright yellow letters. But anyway, Classic Chevy Cat was saying, is that perjury? Perhaps. Perhaps that would be. I guess I just don't know how you would go back about, maintaining your innocence from something like that, because you are lying to the courts, right? If you're saying that you're pleading guilty to something that you didn't do, normally it goes in the opposite direction, that people are submitting false testimony and so on. But lawyers advise us all the time. And this is what somebody once told me, though, that the lawyer is not trying to just follow the law. The lawyer is trying to subvert the law and just not get caught. Hey, Chickadee is here saying, I can hear you. Cowpoke says, the confession killer Henry Lee Lucas was talked into confessing to cold cases for cigarettes and milkshakes. Cowpoke, it's really interesting that you mentioned that, because I started out by talking in this episode about the show Mayor of Kingstown, and they had a fictional character that was based on Henry Lee Lucas, the confession killer. Although it seemed like all the confessions were actually true, it's that same thing about like they give this guy hamburgers and milkshakes and he confesses to crimes. But then at first I thought this was going to be a pure recreation of Henry Lee Lucas, the confession killer, who confessed to over 3,000 murders or something, right? But it turned out there was all types of evidence that actually supported what he was doing. Was like, oh, wow, all of these stories are true. This guy's actually a very vicious serial killer. Batman66 says, Perry Mason is the best lawyer ever. And you love the purple background. Batman66, I was really trying hard to get the background right. And on the Thursday episode of True Crime Talk Radio in the morning, something happened and the computer just crashed, and I felt so bad because, I've been waiting so long to get back to True Crime Talk Radio in the morning. In case this is the first episode that you're listening to, I do the show every Tuesday and Thursday, but I had like a 4-month hiatus because of life offline, and I was so looking forward to get back and doing this, and then the computer crashed, so I wasn't able to do it exactly the way I had planned for so long. Today, so far, everything's working out, but I ended up doing the Thursday show on my phone, and everything just looked pink. And someone was like, Ned, you're zoomed in and you're all pink. And I'm like, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. Sometimes these things happen. Calbook says, real story. He likely committed a few, but most were so convoluted and in the timeline, it couldn't have been him. Oh yeah, I absolutely believe that Henry Lee Lucas was a real serial killer. I just don't believe he committed as many murders as he claimed to have committed. But let's go back to this points about narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. These are the dark triad ones. And one thing that I heard from Radio Reddit is an example that I would like to throw to you guys. Firstly, this is going to be a complicated one. Someone was posting their story, and they were saying that they hate 90% of their friends. I'm like, all right, where are we going with this? The second one is the other 10% of their friends that they actually like, they still would rather spend time by themselves than spend time with the 10% of friends that they actually like. They would probably live a completely solitary and hermetic lifestyle if the family that they had wouldn't be so enraged by it. So, why does somebody like this have friends? What was stated in the video is that it's not socially acceptable to have absolutely zero friends. So what this person decided to do was interact with social circles, try to be very pleasant, try to be very nice, getting along with everyone, being well liked, then just going home and be like, I don't like those people. Narcissism, psychopathy, Machiavellianism. Do you think that person's a psychopath? And you can weigh in the chat. Do you think that someone who hates 90% of their friends and doesn't even want to spend time with the other people they actually like, is that psychopathic or sociopathic behavior? I really don't think so. Is that narcissistic behavior? I think so. I think that would enter into the territory of covert narcissism. Because it's been a while since we've talked about this. The classical narcissist is the person who is trying to put on the facade about how they are tough, powerful, and cool, and they are perfect, and they don't have any flaws because they're trying to mask their insecurities. Classical narcissist. Then we have the covert narcissist, who is mostly detached from social groups. And Professor Sam Vodkin referred to this person as someone who has no core personality. They're just kind of existing, and they don't form a strong emotional bonds, and they don't take people with them when they succeed. I think that does sound like covert narcissism, especially because this person is trying to be deceptive. This person is stating that they don't like 90% of their friends, and they're still interacting with them, almost like using them like so that they can get some type of social acceptance because it makes their life easier. I think that that's a very deceptive and manipulative thing to do. And this is coming from some guy like me. Yes, I've had friendships where I didn't really like the other friend that much, but I was really thinking back to my teen years, and I was like, no, I don't think I've ever actually been at that level when I didn't like 90% of my friends, and the other 10% of the friends I didn't want to spend time with. Yeah, I actually did like my friends at the time. Looking back in retrospect, absolutely not. People from high school, go away. West Virginia is a weird place. If you ever go there, you'll understand. However, I really just thought that, no, I've never really been that extreme and that I would actually maintain this purely for social acceptance. No, I don't think so. And Richard Delaney says, the Thursday phone show came across very well on my end. Yeah, I was surprised. I was really surprised because normally the computer is always better for live streaming and talking to you guys about stuff. But Cowpoke says, is it weird that I totally get that mentally. I burn out easy. I also wanted to give one condition about this guy who doesn't like 90% of his friends. Maybe he's a covert narcissist. I can't diagnose anyone. And when Dr. Todd Grande makes psychological videos about people, he's like, I always want you to remember that this is a real person, so I'm not diagnosing anyone, only speculating about what might have happened. Okay, so this is speculation. And one other possibility, Cowpoke, is that person is just an extreme introvert. They're an extreme introvert, and they like to be by themselves. And I burn out easily, too. Okay, now I know a lot of you guys, you're true crime followers. So when you're reading like true crime stories, there's a reason for that. It's because sometimes human interaction is very, very time consuming. It takes a lot of energy. I get burned out in conversations fairly easily, especially when it's somebody who is doing certain behaviors that I might not like too much. And then it's, so-and-so's relative, it's this type of family function, and you can't just cause a scene, and you can't just, make a large splash and just make some type of uproarious exit, because that will cause damage in other parts of your relationships, let alone that two wrongs don't make a right. Okay, you don't like what this person is saying to you, so then it's just going to be a little bit easier to handle this in a constructive way rather than a destructive way. Chickadee has a comment here saying, "It's a great day to be a mountaineer, wherever you may be." Yes, that's right. Chickadee, I'm a very proud West Virginian. I just meant that in the countryside, which, I grew up in, I found that there are just some people who just have some very bizarre habits. My father said it the best. West Virginians are like hibernating bears. You think that everything is fine. You think everything is okay. And then all of a sudden, one day, they just erupt on you. They just like wake up from their slumber, and then the claws come out, and the friendship is over. The relationship is over. The strong working partnership is over. And maybe it happens in other places. I mean, just I grew up in West Virginia, so that's what we experienced. But I did completely understand what he meant by that. Like, there's just different like patterns of behavior because these things are real. Oh, and we have Jeff Jones here. Jeff Jones with a super chat. Thank you so much, Jeff Jones. I really do appreciate that. That's very nice of you. And thank you to everybody who has been helping out Black Box Online Radio. I mean, once again, I really do appreciate all of these ways that you guys want to support the channel. Calpoke says, West Virginia is clannish, at least in my area. Now, you wrote clannish with a C, Calpoke. Do you mean that, like, it's almost like tribal, where people just have, like, their own groups and their own sections in their own factors, and then you just sort of stay within your own social group, and people don't like to mix and interact? Now, I'm going to share something with you guys, and I'm not exactly sure why I was thinking about this, but I encountered some type of discussion about it online, and I can't even remember where, or else I'd cite the source. But to those of you who believe in evolution, evolution encourages people to go outside of their social groups and outside of their clans and outside of their tribes. And back in like high school and junior high, I always thought it was weird when people from my friend group would get mad if I was talking to somebody else from a different friend group. And then they try to come over and say something embarrassing. They try to come over and sabotage the interaction. They just like make some comment that's kind of an insult or a put down. And at first I was like, oh, well, maybe they're just like jealous of the attention or something, or they're envious in some way. But it doesn't necessarily appear to be that. It's more about power than jealousy, from this one video that I watched that I can't remember the name of. Great way to do some scholarly research, people. And this one is just saying that when you have a group of people, someone is likely to go outside of the group of people and try to interact, try to expand more resources, procreation if you're lucky, and also just more interactions and more communication. So that's what I was trying to do. And I just thought it was so weird that a friend would do that, because when I was 13, 14, 15, and people are just having a problem with me talking to someone who was not in the friend circle, I was just like, well, I didn't say that you can't talk to other people. I didn't say that you couldn't just stay in the friend circle. You can do whatever you want. Why would you ever have a problem with me talking to somebody else? I did not comprehend how power-focused and power-driven the world is. And we have Planet X Filmworks saying, definitely happens in NH. And Planet X Filmworks, are you referring to New Hampshire? Calpoke says, everybody keeps to their own holler. Fair enough. And Quentin Broom says, Jeff Jones, point guard, UVA basketball, 1985. I wasn't even born then yet. I wasn't following basketball. Jeff Jones, did you actually play basketball for UVA, or was Quentin just having a joke? Chickadee says, I've always wished I could go back to high school with the knowledge I have now. Absolutely. Would I ever want to relive my teen years? No. With the one exception that I have the knowledge that I have now. Absolutely, Chickadee. So, look here. If you were to go back without your knowledge, you would just make the same mistakes over and over again, right? Of course you would, because you're you, and you don't know the consequences of your actions. You're going to do things the same way. If you had the knowledge that you had now, I would do a lot of dumb things. I would make new mistakes that were unforeseen, but hopefully I could correct a few of the terrible things that I did that, almost ruined my life 1 or 9 times. Oh, Planet X Filmworks says that this also happens in New Hampshire. And Ross, I thought you're from Boston, Massachusetts, right? Did you also live in New Hampshire for a while? New Hampshire, I would expect, is going to have a similar dynamic to West Virginia based on how rural it is. And I got this warning again that I've never had before, these big yellow letters saying unstable connection. All right, we got new problems going on. Thankfully, Snoopy and I will be here all night if we have to, just trying to get it right. But yes, if you're just joining us now, welcome to True Crime Talk Radio in the Morning. I'm your host, Black Box Ned, and you can get this show anywhere you get your podcast under the names of Black Box True Crime or Black Box Podcast. We're talking about Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and more. And on True Crime Talk Radio in the Morning, I'm hoping to use this as a segment where I can talk to you guys about things like criminology, forensics, criminal psychology, and if anybody has questions about different types of true crime cases, they can just ask anything. Any subject is fair game. So, when it comes to criminology, though, what do we necessarily mean by that? Well, criminology, as I understand, goes back to the 1800s, and there was actually a French investigator named Eugene Francois Vidocq. And what he did was he created a set of organizational behaviors and organizational systems for his research and for his investigations. And this became the foundations of criminology, the study of crime. And this goes on into the 20th century, where we would see people are not only talking about just looking at how people commit crimes, because Eugene Francois Vidocq was about looking at ballistics, keeping records and logs, looking at suspect behaviors and so on. And there was an individual named Hervey Cleckley who wrote a book called The Mask of Sanity. And this became a very, very influential and foundational book that would go on to inspire somebody named Robert Hare. He was the predecessor of Robert Hare, who is responsible for the Hare checklist, which is used to diagnose psychopathy. And there's a chain of events that goes on where you just see these expansions into opportunities and ways to classify human behavior. Because I tell people this all the time, like even before Black Box Online Radio, when people would come to me like, Ned, what do I do with my life? The 3 times that that's happened, I'm like, do a personality assessment. When someone's like, I don't know what to do with my life, do a personality assessment. Find out what your strengths are. Find out where it's guiding you. If you're high in trade openness, seek out creative projects. If you're high in trade and conscientiousness, seek out structured living. If you're high in extroversion, seek out a job that will give you an opportunity to interact with lots of people in a friendly way. If you're high in trade agreeableness, try to find an intimate partner and go through a set of steps to obtain an intimate partner, and so on. There are strategies that you can use. This all comes back to classification. So I think that what Eugene Francois Vidocq did was very valuable, because he's trying to look at all of these problems that people have. Well, let's break it down into things. Somebody committed a crime by gun. Well, let's analyze the ballistics. Someone committed a crime by knife. Well, let's analyze the stab wounds, and let's keep records, and let's keep files, and then let's compare different things together. So where does this bring us to the 21st century? How does all of this come together? Well, in terms of differentiating between criminology and criminal psychology, I think that the easiest way to put it is that psychology is about the study of human behavior and its relationship to that's psychology. With criminology, it's more about the relationships between human behavior and the law. And when people violate the law, it becomes criminal, hence the study of crime. So those are some things I would like to be exploring. And I was actually reading about the stories of Eugene Francois Vidocq because of the Vidocq Society, which was created by an individual named Richard Walter. And he is a profiler who made a very famous psychological profile of the Zodiac killer. And Richard Walter got into a lot of hot water back in 2023 for exaggerating his credentials, misrepresenting what he was saying, as well as talking about things on his resume and CV that he didn't actually do. So then what happened was he filed a libel lawsuit or a defamation lawsuit against New York Magazine, who wrote this story on him, calling him a fake Sherlock Holmes. And what happened was it was dismissed, but like, what is it called? With or without prejudice? It's dismissed without prejudice. So he has the opportunity to file it again. And we have some things here in the chat where Ross says, Planet X, Filmworks. I'm from New Hampshire originally, but from Massachusetts, lived there from 2008 to 2017. Well, Ross, I think you're a little bit like me. I lived 0 to 6 in Maryland, and then I moved to West Virginia in 95. And then Quentin says, sorry, that was off point. Jeff Jones was not a basketball player. All right. I mean, that's fine. And Batman 66 says, I'm in Southwest PA, and there's lots of clicks. Chickadee says, the psychopathy around the Lori Vallow Chad Daybell case is off the charts. Yeah, I really wish I knew that one better, Chickadee. I mean, I told you guys I listen to Crime Talk, and they often talk about Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell, and that's the one that's dealing with some types of family murders and issues. But here's an important point. There is no limit to human brutality. There is no limit to human dysfunction. There is nothing that is safe or sacred. Parents will kill their children. Parents will kill their children and frame somebody else. Parents will hurt their children for selfishness. Parents will attack their spouses and their partners. People will kill someone because of greed. And it even goes beyond greed, just simple disputes. And Classic Chevy Cat said, do you agree with Dr. Todd Grande's assessment of the Zodiac? Classic Chevy Cat, I mostly agree with Dr. Todd Grande's assessment of the Zodiac in relation to the personality traits. When he discusses the facts of the case, it's like he was trying to say that David Faraday was shot inside the front seat of the car, and the Zodiac is operating like the son of Sam in that regards. That's a fact that I think he got completely wrong. I think all the evidence indicates that David Faraday was shot outside of the car, standing outside on the passenger side. But when he did the Big Five personality trait assessment for the Zodiac killer, I think that Dr. Todd Grande was mostly spot on. The only difference that he said was he thought the Zodiac was average in conscientiousness, and I said the Zodiac was high in conscientiousness. And we're both saying, like, he's low in neuroticism, high in trait openness, because that's open to new experiences. And the Zodiac would reference things like comic books, musicals, and pieces of literature. Those types of things were very much and very present in the Zodiac's letters. So I think absolutely high in trait openness and absolutely low in agreeableness. Of course, he's a serial killer. Psychopathic serial killers are low in agreeableness. They just know how to fake it, and they know how to pretend. And we actually have a comment about D.B. Cooper here from Batman 66, who says, I don't think D.B. Cooper had any friends or family because someone would have come forward by now. Perhaps. Now, although as I understand Batman 66, you are a believer that D.B. Cooper did not survive the jump back in 1971, and you think that nobody reported him missing, no one was looking for this guy. Maybe it was Robert Richard Lepsey all the time. Dick Lepsey, the subject of the book Still Missing. I have 2 episodes about him here on Black Box Online Radio. He was just a missing person who disappeared roughly before the D.B. Cooper skyjacking, never seen or heard from again. He matches some of the descriptions, except he was from the Midwest and not from Washington State, and he may have actually gone to Mexico. So who knows what happened with all that. Christopher Valdez says, have you ever interviewed Tom Voigt? No, I have not, Christopher Valdez. He chose not to participate in the Interview with the Expert series from the Zodiac Killer channel back in 2021. And in 2023, I launched my Black Box Online Radio interview series, which kind of comes in and out. There are no rules here on Black Box Online Radio. I just did an interview with Brandon Arnold about D.B. Cooper last Friday, and I'm going to be doing a lot more interviews in the future for BBO War. But no, I've never interviewed Tom Voigt. When I contacted him in 2023 saying, hey, I'm doing interviews now on BBO War, would you like to be a guest? He was working on some type of media project, so he was like under contract. I shouldn't even say things because I don't want to reveal someone's private information, let alone the fact that I don't remember like the stuff like 2 years ago, so I don't want to misstate something. I've never interviewed him, and I would absolutely have him on the show because no matter what people say, he really does know a lot about the Zodiac Killer. He really does understand the Zodiac Killer mystery, and he has a lot of insights. And someone was even talking about that in the chat about how they just thought that it seemed like he was saying something about Arthur Lee Allen that seemed very truthful, and that, it's just Arthur Lee Allen was in the possession of 10.5 wing walkers or something like that, and the Zodiac wore size 10.5 wing walkers at the Lake Berryessa stabbing. Radio Reddit in regards to psychopathy, narcissism, and Machiavellianism. You can put anything in the chat that you want, and I'll try to respond to it. And this is one where a guy went to visit Japan, and he met a woman who was not Japanese. She was Indonesian, and she owned a dance studio, or at the very least, she operated a dance studio in Japan, and she let him stay in the dance studio for free. He would sleep right on the dance floorboards, and he just had a backpack with him. That was all. And he then began to talk to her. And this woman shared something that she was very mad at her best friend. And he's like, well, why are you mad at your best friend? And she said, well, I was supposed to travel with him to northern Japan, and now he backed out of the trip. And the guy says, well, I'm sorry to hear that. Why did he back out of the trip? And she says, because he had cancer. He says he's going to be too busy with the chemotherapy. Now we can't go on a holiday together. I'm mad. And this guy just said that, like, inside him, he was just dying. Part of him is just like, oh my goodness, this person is a psychopath. I think the exact terms that were used in the video were sociopath, possibly full-blown psychopath. But as far as I'm concerned, sociopathy is a factor of psychopathy. It's a variant of psychopathy. So when I'm listening to that, I just want to know, what do you guys think about that? You can put your response in the chat. Do you think that that person is instantly a psychopath based on that type of behavior when their friend has been diagnosed with cancer and they're just like, now we can't go on vacation together. I'm so mad at them. I tend to lean toward that could possibly be someone who is definitely, actually not possibly, definitely they're displaying sociopathic tendencies. But in regards to being an absolute clinical psychopath, I don't think we have enough information purely based on that. But this is another point, though, that I heard recently. Again, from the wonderful corners of the internet, scholarly, right? Just because somebody is not a clinical psychopath does not mean that you should stay with them. Just because someone isn't officially listed as a narcissist does not mean you should stay with them or even give them any more points or credit. As soon as someone begins to approach and respond to you with a lack of empathy and a lack of care and a lack of concern, that's when it's time to go. Psychopath, sociopath, narcissist, it's almost at the point is this person mistreating you or not? If they're mistreating you, it's time to get out. And Chickadee says, she is self-centered with no empathy. Something important is missing in her. Yeah, but like Chickadee, you're right. I don't dispute any of that. I'm just not overly shocked, though. I've definitely encountered people who have those types of behaviors and exhibit those types of behaviors where they just have no real regard for concern and care for people who are compartmentalized. They're like, these are the people in their life that they care about. These people over here, disposable, dispensable. They can throw them away at any time. And I talked about this once when I did the episode called Fruit Psychology, which is the greatest thing that I've ever done for Black Box Online Radio. And I really need to redo that because that had 4 different characteristics. I was just describing what I called the red berry personality, but it needs a better name like that. We can almost just call it like a red personality. And that's someone who only cares about people who are above them on the dominance hierarchy. The people who are below them on the dominance hierarchy are just, they're just there for their own entertainment. They have no strong feelings for them. And I do mean that. Like, they can mistreat them, do unfair things to them, take advantage of them, and they have no real emotional backlash about, even if this person is emotionally devastated, they're like, whatever, how does this affect me? Their emotions from that person are only centered on themselves, not caring about the other person. But to the other people who are more powerful than them, total kiss asses. They'll get on their knees and bow down and kowtow. Total kiss asses. That's like the red personality. And you can think of it this way, that it's kind of reminiscent of the sociosexual hierarchy with beta male behavior, or just beta behavior, because it could exist in a woman too. We're talking about a woman right now, the Indonesian woman who had the dance studio in Japan. And beta behavior is also about preserving structures. Someone's the leader, someone's the follower, and then you have all these other people, and they're like, no, we're going to keep this in line. He's the leader, I'm the follower, and you guys are all below me. It's like being the right-hand man or the second in command, and they just recognize that they can't be at the top, so they're just going to kiss the ass of the person at the top and mistreat people at the bottom so they can feel what? A sense of power. It's almost like we live in a world of power, and that we do. But the reason why I said I needed to remake that fruit psychology video was very simple. I think that it's one of the best classification systems that I've actually developed in my own original observations here on Black Box Online Radio. But that's not even getting into the world of criminal psychology. That's just straight up dealing with psychology. And also, though, I mean, on True Crime Talk Radio in the morning, we can make things a little bit more specific. I've done things about individual true crime cases here before. Because this show has just returned, I mean, I can talk to you guys about some of the previous ones. Last year, we had some very good discussions on the story of Jeffrey McDonald. That's a more or less who was responsible for the crimes, even though he was convicted for it, a whodunit, if you will. We also have talked about the serial killer Ed Gein here. Lots about D.B. Cooper and John Emile List. They've also come up on True Crime Talk Radio in the morning. Sometimes it can be focused on an individual subject, not to mention, sometimes the Zodiac Killer, sometimes Jack the Ripper. But overall, though, really, I just wanted to say a big thank you to everybody who has been following along with these episodes. I greatly appreciate you. And also, big thank you to everyone who tuned into the most recent Zodiac Monday. Now, that episode began with a very big challenge question. And the majority of the comments that I was reading from yesterday's Zodiac Monday were in regards to a challenge question that somebody asked. If you had a gun pointed to your head and they asked you who was the Zodiac killer, and you have to give the correct answer, and otherwise you will be shot, and you can't decline, you can't say I don't know, you can't say I don't have a suspect, you have to give the name of a suspect, who would you choose? And I said Arthur Lee Allen. And a lot of people were actually being very receptive to that in the comments section. And I was so surprised that that was my answer, because I've rated suspects higher than Arthur Lee Allen. For example, Richard Gaikowski, he received a higher rating than Arthur Lee Allen. Ted Kaczynski, I gave him a higher rating than Arthur Lee Allen. And I said Arthur Lee Allen's like a 5 out of 10 chance. You have a mountain of evidence for Arthur Lee Allen and a mountain of evidence against Arthur Lee Allen being the Zodiac. Then, with Gaikowski, I think he had more of the eccentric personality that would be attracted to the content of the Zodiac Killer's letters. With Ted Kaczynski, though, a lot of people might be very surprised about that. But with Kaczynski, I think that he is someone who would be very good at the analytical aspects of the Zodiac Killer case. The bomb diagrams, because those are diagrams that he didn't follow through on yet. And Ted Kaczynski would go on to become the Unabomber. So is that not an evolutionary form of behavior? Possibly. But with Kaczynski, he is also someone who has very similar handwriting, 5 feet 9 inches tall. One point where I completely agree with Gareth Penn, though, author of Time 17, is that Ted Kaczynski is somebody who just has very different facial features than what is mentioned by any of the witness descriptions. I don't think he resembles the Zodiac composite sketch at all. Snoop perhaps represents the composite sketch better than Ted Kaczynski, if I can be very honest. But, I definitely can see, like, the mental factors that would have driven him to do something like creating the Zodiac Killer persona. So I said 6 out of 10 for Gaikowski, 6 out of 10 for Kaczynski, and Lee Allen, 5 out of 10. But if I had a gun pointed to my head, that's what I would choose. And most people in the comments section said something very similar. We perhaps know the most about Arthur Lee Allen, with the exception of somebody. We know a lot about Kaczynski. But Arthur Lee Allen has, we know the most about him in regards to the Zodiac Killer mystery, let alone he was the prime suspect of law enforcement. One day, I hope we are able to gain closure. And by the way, I would just like to say, I'm going to turn it over to you guys now. Do you have any final concluding thoughts or messages for this episode of True Crime Talk Radio in the morning? You can give any final notes in the chat. Once more time, anybody can write the show at blackboxonlineradio@aol.com. You can also get me on Facebook. My personal Facebook name is Ned DeHaan. There's also a Black Box Online Radio Facebook page. And I'm going to be using Facebook as well as Instagram and TikTok to release shorts every Monday through Friday here on BBO Bar. And on Instagram and TikTok, I use blackboxned88. The shorts are mostly focusing on serial killer stories, but of course, any subject is fair game. I've already done a few memorials and tributes. And overall, it's really nice to be back in the swing of things and being able to make content for you guys like I did regularly in the past. And you have been an amazing audience. Thank you for putting up with my hiatus and my weird personal behavior and all of these things. And thank you for putting up with me now that I no longer have the fox. I am genuinely upset about this. Those were tears, by the way. And as for now, I'm just going to say thank you so much for listening, and I will see you guys tomorrow talking about Jack the Ripper for Ripper Wednesday. That's all for me now. Until next time.